Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Rob Osborne. I'm the Director of Community Relations at Xcel Energy. And I just want to thank you for allowing us to be your title sponsor this year at the conference. We really enjoy the relationship we have with EDCC. It helps us build our business and hopefully helps you build the businesses and the communities that you serve. A little bit about Xcel, if I could take a few minutes, give a short commercial. In the past 6 years, hopefully you've been involved with us in helping save a lot of energy. We've invested through partnerships with businesses to help them grow and be attracted here to Colorado, over $700 million in energy efficiency. And that's something that's a tool for you as economic developers to use to help your businesses grow and reduce their cost of business and operations. Why does Xcel Energy invest in economic development? In the past 20 years, I think we've been every year the largest investor in organizations throughout the state. It's really to help you do your jobs. Without sustainable communities and sustainable businesses, the costs for services that we provide would have to go up. The infrastructure needs would not be able to be supported. So our work is a symbiotic relationship with you. Today I have the privilege of welcoming our candidates for Lieutenant Governor and having them come to the stage and explain to you their thoughts and ideals about economic development and policy. Our first candidate that I get to welcome today is our current Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Joe Garcia. Mr. Garcia has an extensive career in leadership in Colorado. Currently as Lieutenant Governor, he's also the Executive Director of the Department of Education, leading the governor's efforts and initiatives to form a seamless public education system here in the state. Prior to his role as Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Garcia led CSU Pueblo. No one from Pueblo here? Okay. And really worked to increase the enrollment at that institution to provide more broader opportunities for education serving that community. He also led Pikes Peak Community College prior to that. Mr. Garcia has a passion for education, both professionally and I think personally. He received his JD from Harvard University. Please welcome me. Please work with me or help me welcome Lieutenant Governor Joe Garcia.
Thanks very much. Okay, am I live? Can you all hear me? Well, good morning. It is a real pleasure to be here with you. I have had the good fortune in the past to work with a couple of different area EDCs. First in Colorado Springs a number of years ago when I worked in Colorado Springs as president of Pikes Peak Community College. More recently at PEDCO with my great friends in Pueblo. And it's really important, I think, for all of us to remember that why we have these EDCs. Now, you know that, you think about it every day, but it really is about collaboration. It's how we work together to create better opportunities, more economic opportunities in our communities. That's really what the governor has long been focused on, is this partnership and collaboration notion. So I want to talk about those things. Before I do that, I also then want to mention that if you haven't checked out the video out there at the table for the Colorado Workforce Development Council, I would really encourage you to do that, because that video talks a lot about sector partnerships. What are sector partnerships? Why are they important, and what are we accomplishing? And I would really, again, encourage you to take a look at that very well-made video. So I think, again, the Colorado Workforce Development Council is doing so much to help us build and grow Colorado's economy the way we all want to see it grow. I also want to talk a little bit about sort of where we've been. And, you know, this is information you all know, but I want to kind of take us back to when Governor Hickenlooper took office, when I took office with him. You know, we know that our economy was in a very different shape than it is now. We know that we had high unemployment. We knew that we faced a $1 billion structural deficit in our state budget. We knew that every part of the state was suffering. We knew that our unemployment rate was higher even than the states that border us. So now I would say, well, let's look forward. Let's look at what's changed. Well, you all know that as well. You've all worked hard to make it possible. You know, when the governor took office, we saw that we had this difficult situation. So he said, how do we fix this? Well, he knew that you can't do it from the state capitol. And the only way to do it is to go out and talk to people in the communities. in every part of the state about what you need. He said, let's flip the traditional approach and let's take this, what he called the bottom-up approach to economic development. Let's go out and find out what people throughout the state need and want to grow their economies in their respective communities, because every community is different. You know, the governor had been, as you all know, the mayor of Denver. But he also realized right away, okay, I'm no longer the mayor of Denver. I'm the governor of an entire state, and the entire state needs help. It needs support. It needs to build partnerships. And it does need, in some cases, assistance from the state in order to achieve the particular goals in those communities. So we went around the state. Ken Lund is here. You're going to hear from him in just another hour or so. And with his help, built this blueprint, this bottom-up blueprint to say, let's fix what's going on around the state. Now, I'm going to get into that blueprint in a minute, but let's leap forward to where we are now. What's changed? Well, we know we've gone from 40th in the nation in terms of job growth to 4th. You know, we've gone, some Business Insider magazine named us the #1 fastest growing economy in the country, in the entire country. We know that while the states around us have also seen their unemployment rates decrease, we've come farther, faster. It is our unemployment rate was higher than theirs, and yet we've generally, that is, increased employment at a much faster rate than any of them. We should be proud of that. You should be proud of that, because you are who helped make this possible. You made it possible because you got very actively involved in helping us to design this blueprint. In fact, I can't say we designed it. We, the governor, we, the folks at the Capitol. It's we, the people in this room, and all the people out there in the communities who came to the community forums and shared their ideas and said, this is what we need, whether it's in southern Colorado, western Colorado, urban Front Range, northern Colorado. Everybody came together. So let's talk about what we really accomplished there. First, we came up with 6 basic objectives. First, we said we'd build a business-friendly environment. Well, what does that mean? Well, you'll hear from our opponent that one of the things that we need to do in government is that one of the things that he has said he would do is reduce regulations, get rid of unnecessary regulations. Now, I haven't actually heard him identify a single one, but I will tell you what we've done is we've already eliminated over 1,200 regulations. And we've either completely eliminated or reduced those. We've tried very hard to reduce the burden. Whenever somebody brings us something that they say, this is getting in our way, we've said we want to look at it. The governor talks a lot about when he was a brew pub owner and he was trying to simply offer sidewalk seating outside his brew pub, and the number of city regulations he faced in trying to expand his business and create more jobs. And he found that very frustrating. He has not forgotten that. He remembers that everything we can do to ease the burden on business so that it can grow and create jobs is important. We've done that. Now, he also said, well, I would say first that one of the results of that has been he's gotten support from business leaders, including business leaders from the other side of the aisle, from both parties. Recently, 125 major business leaders in the state, most of them Republican, came out in support of the governor precisely because they see that he has built a business-friendly environment that has helped Colorado to grow. Now, he also said that we'd retain, grow, and recruit companies. Now, again, you'll hear some folks say, government shouldn't do anything, it should just get out of the way. Well, sometimes that's true, but sometimes government, especially a strong leader like the governor who has a business background, can really make a difference by inserting himself in a process. And one of those processes, one that you all know well, the challenge of recruiting companies. We had companies that weren't even considering coming to Colorado until the governor picked up the phone and called the CEO and said, look, have you considered Colorado? Whether it's Denver, Fort Collins, Pueblo, or Grand Junction, or any place else. He calls people and says, think about it. Here are things we can offer you that nobody else can. And the results have been impressive. I mean, we know that for many years, for those of you who have been around in Colorado a long time, we were losing corporate headquarters. Now we've turned the corner. We are gaining those back. And let me give some examples. Arrow Electronics, one of the biggest employers in the country, now in this state. Ardent Mills, a company that didn't exist and wasn't really going to come. Governor got involved. And it's really about all parts of our economy, right? Whether it's aerospace, whether it's advanced technology, or whether it's based in our traditional businesses like agriculture, there's opportunities to bring in businesses if one gets involved and makes it clear that Colorado is a business-friendly environment. The governor has done that. The governor has said, look, we need to increase access to capital. You've all said the same thing. People in your community say, how can we grow if we can't gain access to capital? Now, rarely can government just provide venture capital, but the governor got involved and helped create the Colorado Impact Fund. The Colorado Impact Fund, you've heard about, has $65 million already in capital, none of it from the government, none of it from taxpayers, all of it from private investors who came together with the governor's leadership and said, we want to invest in promising business in Colorado. That creates opportunities for all of our businesses. Governor also said we'd create and market a stronger Colorado brand. And I think that sometimes people like me who aren't in business think, a brand? Why is that really important? Well, you guys know that. You guys know that very well. And what we've seen is now over 500 Colorado businesses have said, yes, we want to use that brand. We want to use it to help market our products both inside and outside the state. That is a way that government, I think, again, can come up with ideas, bring people together, share those ideas, and without investing taxpayer dollars, create opportunities for businesses. And then we also said, look, we need to educate and train the workforce of the future. This is what I really care about. I'd been the president of a community college, Pikes Peak Community College in Colorado Springs, multi-campus college that had career and tech programs as well as academic programs. And we really served 16,000 students overall, many of them military, many of them traditional age, but many of them people who were already adults, already in the workforce, and who wanted to gain some additional skills. We worked hard to do that. We have community colleges throughout the state doing that. 13 state community colleges, from very small rural ones to very large urban ones, but all helping to create that workforce that we all need. And here's the good news. Colorado has one of the most well-educated workforces in the country. We're ranked number 2 among all states in terms of the percentage of our adults over the age of 25 with an associate's or a bachelor's degree or higher. Number 2 in the country. Now, that is what helps grow and attract businesses. Now, I would say we still have more work to do because we need to make sure that we are providing opportunities everywhere in the state, not just in some places, and then in the areas where we're likely to have growth. So, for example, in advanced manufacturing. We've had to work with our community colleges, and we have, and we've also gotten from the federal government tens of millions of dollars in federal grant money to grow advanced manufacturing training programs at our community colleges. That helps businesses. That helps businesses get the workforce they need. You know that's important. You know whether you're prospecting for people coming out of state or helping local business to grow, that's what they care about. We also need to support our research universities and our state four-year colleges. And so one of the other things we've been doing is trying to increase funding so that more students can go and it can be affordable. How many of you have kids in college or getting ready to go to college? How many of you love the tuition increases that you've seen in recent years? Probably none of you. We don't either. So what the governor did this last year, well, he said, we put $100 million new dollars into higher education. But it isn't without strings. We said, look, colleges and universities, $60 million of this is going to go to help defray your operating costs, but you have to agree that you're not going to increase tuition at a double-digit rate. In fact, we're going to cap all of you for the next 2 years at a 6% maximum increase, and most of the universities have come in well below that. Now, we had been facing double-digit tuition increases. Now, of that $100 million, the governor also took $40 million and said, we're going to set that aside for student financial aid. And not just need-based aid, but merit-based aid, which we haven't had in the state for a very long time. Because again, we want our best and most talented students to stay in Colorado, to get educated here and to return and to stay here and work here. That's important. It's important to me. It should be important to you. We know that's important because in Colorado, well, 74% of the jobs by 2020 are going to require some post-secondary credential. Doesn't mean a bachelor's degree necessarily. Could be an associate's degree or it could be a certificate, but we're not very close to that 74% level. But that's what happens when you have advanced manufacturing, when you have aerospace, when you have technology and communication-based businesses. You need well-educated folks. We need to invest in those, in our institutions and in our young people. So again, some of the things that the governor has really led. And then we said we'd cultivate innovation and technology. And so what are the things that government can do that private business sometimes doesn't do on its own is expand broadband access to rural areas. It's hard. It's a big investment to expand broadband in low population areas. That's why we haven't seen it anywhere in the country in the amount that we need in those rural areas. And yet, how do you grow an economy in a rural area if people do not have access to high-speed broadband? So we've worked really hard to do that. We want all of our businesses throughout to be able to succeed throughout the state, and all of our kids throughout the state to have the educational advantages that come with that broadband. So again, those are the things that have brought us to where we are now. Where, as I said before, we're fourth in the nation in job growth, first in economic promise. Unemployment is now, had been above 9, now it's down to 5.3%. If you're here from Pueblo or other communities, it may not be 5.3% in your community, but it's better than it was. And we are committed to continuing to work to bring that down even more. We've made progress. We've got momentum. Now is not the time to lose that momentum. We'll maintain that momentum if we continue to bring people together, to work together, to do these things, to make sure we have a well-educated workforce, to make sure we don't have any more regulations in place than necessary, and to build on Colorado's strengths. What are those strengths? I just had the opportunity to talk to Bruce Beege from Greeley a few minutes ago, and we were talking about how are things going in Greeley, and he was saying they're going great. And so when you think of Greeley, what do you think of the businesses that are very strong? Well, some people know that oil and gas in that part of the area, in Weld County and others, has really taken off. But what people don't often think about is, but our traditional agricultural economy is also growing. In fact, it's growing even faster. In 2009, our agricultural exports totaled $1 billion. In 2013, that had doubled to $2 billion. And our agricultural industry generates over $40 billion in economic activity and 173,000 jobs in the state every year. And yet, often it's sort of an invisible economy to those people who live in the Front Range communities. Now, the governor knows that it's important, and that's why he's worked so hard on this. And again, we can say, well, the best thing government can do there is get out of the way. No, we can do more than that. And the governor did more than that. With Ken's help, with John Salazar's help, our agricultural commissioner, went to Mexico, worked to negotiate with the Mexican government to eliminate some of the barriers to exporting, let's say, Colorado potatoes to Mexico. It's made progress. So now, with the governor's leadership, with the help of people in government, working together with private business, we have grown that economy tremendously. We shouldn't overlook that. And then I would say we need to, again, think about those areas where we haven't seen the same growth, whether it's Pueblo, Lamar, the Yampa Valley. Those are areas we are targeting for more advanced manufacturing. Things that we can do where there's a workforce, there's a space, there's affordable land, there's opportunity, but we just need to bring all those things together, working with all of you to make that possible. And then, I guess I just want to close, and then I want to have some opportunity for questions by saying, again, we can't lose sight of the importance of our education system. I talked about higher ed, but our K-12 system is every bit as important. We are not a state that funds public education particularly well compared to other states, and yet our results have been overall pretty good. Not as good, though, as I think Colorado's capable of. If we want more kids to enroll in and graduate from college, we need to think about whether we're graduating them from high school college ready. Right now, and for many years, we've not been doing so. About 40%, as many as 40% of graduates, of high school graduates, enter college and need some remediation. We've been working very hard over the last few years to reduce that, and we're finally making progress. We finally have seen a reduction in the percentage of kids needing remediation and a reduction in the amount of money we're spending on remediation. But if we really want to be more successful there, we've got to have higher ed collaborating with and aligning itself with the K-12 system. We've got to make sure as well that as students enter the K-12 system, they've had access to quality preschool, because we know that makes a difference. And so the governor has made sure that we've invested to create more early childhood slots for needy children. That's really, really important. As I talk to elementary school teachers around the state, they tell me they can spot instantly those kids who have had a quality early childhood opportunity and those who have not. Too many of our kids are not reading at grade level when they are in third grade. We've been addressing that through the READ Act, through the Colorado Reads initiative, done a lot of things to put books in the hands of kids and families, but more importantly, we've been working with families to understand why it's important to engage with your kids, whether you're English speaking or not, whether you're low income, middle income, or high income. We need to get parents engaged with their kids and engaged with their schools. That's how we build a strong future for Colorado. So, again, I would say, look, we've made great progress. And the next 4 years, I think, present an enormous opportunity to build on that progress. To do it, we need to do what we've been doing, work together, collaborate. That is the governor's style. That is obviously your style. That's why you're involved in this organization, because you recognize that working by yourself, you can't address the issues in your community or the issues we face as a state. You need to come together. That's what the governor does well. He brings people together, finds out what they think we need to do in order to help, whether it's to get out of the way or maybe to put our shoulder to the wheel a little bit and help. Those are things that we need to hear from you. And so we've heard from you. You've helped us. So I'm here to say thank you. Thank you on behalf of the governor and the entire state of Colorado, because you are the reason, since, to say this in all sincerity, that we have seen the growth that we've seen in terms of our economic output, in terms of our employment numbers, 200,000 more jobs than we had just 3.5 years ago. That's significant, and that wouldn't happen if communities and individuals and government weren't working together. And I'm looking forward to taking your questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you. I know I've said a whole lot, probably too much too fast. So now's the opportunity to maybe cover some other ground if you'd like to do that. Thank you very much. Questions? Okay. And if you could tell me your name and where you're from, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm Susan Blansett. I'm with R&M Resource Development, and I live in Golden.
No.
Gallup organization data recently has suggested that one of the most important factors in student achievement, K-12 student achievement, is teacher engagement and enthusiasm. You just mentioned the necessity of alignment between higher ed in Colorado and K-12 achievement. Can you comment on the recent conflict that we're seeing in Jeffco schools between the school board, the students, teachers, parents over curriculum, AP curriculum that, of course, is part of that alignment with higher ed? Do you think this is overall a good or bad thing for Colorado education? And can you comment on this trend that we're seeing?
I'd be happy to. First, I think one of the positive things that we've seen is that parents and students and teachers are engaging. Again, teachers, school board members, parents, students, school board members, to talk about what's important. How do we successfully teach our kids? Is it about curriculum? And the public should have a voice in that curriculum. But we also need to think about what we've seen, I think, throughout public education. We've seen a lot of different groups who have slightly different approaches, philosophies when it comes to assessments or standards, or even things like length of a school day, or what subjects should be a priority. So we don't always agree, but what we have is, I think, most people coming together in kind of a moderate center saying, let's work these things out. If we don't get those folks to continue to work together and everybody retreats to their own corners, then what we do is, I think, give too loud a voice to those on the extreme. And then once we break down, I think, and we end up in these camps where we simply can't talk to each other, or instead where we're facing each other across picket lines and waving signs. I think if we can get parents to be aware of what their kids are being taught, to talk with their kids about what's being taught, and for kids to think about what they're being taught and to challenge teachers. Good teachers don't mind being challenged. They see it as a sign of constructive engagement by students. We want students to be prepared to be successful in a world that is complicated, diverse, and changing. We can't do that if we limit what we're teaching them in our schools. So overall, I am pleased to see that students and parents are getting engaged in a way that they might not have otherwise. I won't tell you that I support the efforts of the school board when it comes to the Curriculum Review Committee, but I would say that's what school boards and teachers and administrators should be doing. They should be thoughtful, but they shouldn't be driven by, I think, a political agenda or an ideological agenda when it comes to determining what we should be teaching our kids. Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for coming out here again. Steve Art with the City of Wheat Ridge. And I'll pose a question to you and Ms. Rapella if you could also address this in your comments too. Two legislative issues that will be coming up again this year, construction defects and urban renewal legislation and the use of TIF. Can you comment on the party's stance on that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On the party's stance? Yeah. Oh, the government. Okay, that I could do. I'm going to let Ken Lund address the TIF issue because that one's, I know he's been working on a lot. He'll be up here in a little bit. Let me say a little bit about the construction defects one because there was, as you know, there's been an effort predominantly in the metropolitan area to have more owner-occupied unit construction, and we've seen that really fall off. Some people attribute that to the fact that the construction defects litigation makes it too easy to sue builders over defects, and so they're reluctant to do it. So we've seen incredible construction activity in Metro Denver. You all know that. I mean, the number of residential units being built it's never been as high as it is now. But they're virtually all rental units. I think it's below 5% or so. Maybe it's gone up a little bit in terms of owner-occupied. Last year there was a bill introduced by a Democrat to try to address that, to try to make it, I think, possible to get more units built. There wasn't agreement on it. There was a lot of negotiation around it. The mayor's been very involved, Mayor of Denver and other mayors of some of the metro communities, but didn't get it passed. The governor's team has worked with the sponsors and with people to try to find a compromise that people could live with. The governor's, can't pass legislation. He can only sign it or veto it. We didn't get that opportunity this past year. We know it's going to come back. We're hopeful that, again, those groups have been able to work together because we think that we do need to have some change in order to create more owner-occupied units. That would be a good thing, not just in Denver, but in other communities. So we want to continue to work with the parties, try to see if we can find a compromise, bringing together the builders, homeowners, trial lawyers, others who are involved, local government folks. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get something done this year. The governor would like to see something get done. The mayor obviously wants to see something get done, but we'll have to wait for the session. So. And TIF, as I said, I'm gonna let Ken deal with that when he gets up here because, frankly, I'm afraid if I answer it, he'll have to get up here anyway to correct me. So, yes.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Kitty Hook with Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, and I live
I'm
in
sorry,
Denver.
with who?
Newmark Grubb Knight Frank,
Okay.
commercial real estate. One of our assets in Colorado is our mountains, the quality of life. That attracts quality workforce. But our transportation system is in dire need of fixing. So aside from hiring Frank Gray and giving him an unlimited budget, what would you propose and how can we fix this?
Well, the good news is we've already gotten a good start. When we came in office, it just seemed like there was no real transportation infrastructure work going on, at the state level. And so the governor worked with others to try to find some money to help CDOT do things like finally address the twin tunnel issue near Idaho Springs. We're going to make great progress in that. We're already made great progress in that. I think that is going to significantly help at that choke point. There's more we need to do. All of it is very, very expensive. So when you figure out, well, what's the revenue source for that? We do need new revenue in order to do it. There's simply not enough money elsewhere. So people are not very enthusiastic about increased fuel taxes. I'm not either. Nobody wants to pay more for gas, more in taxes. No one really likes the vehicle miles traveled tax. But I think we need to continue to talk about that. I think what we've seen, though, is that through creatively partnering with private investors, we have been able to make some progress. And certainly hasn't been without controversy, but we are seeing, for example, along Highway 36, we're seeing some much-needed expansion. I think that's going to be important. We're going to need to consider opportunities like that going forward, and we're going to have to continue to look for other revenue sources. There's just no question about it. And, frankly, I would love to see more east-west mass transit, more bus service, if not rail, because, frankly, you can do that without spending a lot of money. It's just that Coloradans, especially rural Coloradans, we just haven't gotten used to the idea of getting on a bus. We like to drive our own big SUVs all by ourselves. And I think part of that will involve a cultural shift as well. Yes? Any other questions? I don't know how we're doing on time. Okay, now we don't have to use it all, of course, that we can give you guys a break, but is any others? Okay. Well, okay. Water is one of the biggest challenges Colorado is facing now and has faced over its history, as you know. We've got, whereas most of our population, it's on the Front Range, most of our water is on the western slope. And nobody really much loves Trans Mountain diversion. It's costly, and politically it's tough. We do know that, and one of the things the governor has worked on for years, in fact, even when he was mayor of Denver, he was traveling to the western slope and the eastern plains talking about water and talking about what Denver could contribute to the solution simply by being more thoughtful and conserving water. So he always says, first thing we need to do is focus on conservation. We don't need to use as much water as we do now in our private homes and on our lawns. We do need to make sure water is available to continue to support our agricultural industry. But we've seen our agricultural industry come up with incredibly creative ways to be more productive with less water. And everything from the way they plow or rather don't plow their fields, the way they plant seeds, the way they monitor their irrigation with everything from satellite imaging. Doing tremendous work on the agricultural side. We need to work just as hard on the domestic side. And then we need to think about storage. There's no question we need to think about storage, but building new reservoirs and dams isn't something that happens overnight. It takes literally decades. And so the governor said, rather than building things new, maybe we ought to think about some of our existing reservoirs and simply adding some depth to them. That is, making our dams a little higher and taking our existing reservoirs and storing far more water. So I think those are the sort of creative approaches we need to consider. And we need to, again, make sure that what we're not doing is the old policy of buy and dry and leaving agricultural communities without their most important resource. Okay, yes, sir.
John Nicholas, I'm with the Estes Park EDC. A couple of quick comments and a question. First, reopening of the roads to Estes Park and reopening the national park were hugely significant for our local community, and we really appreciate the governor's leadership on that. And secondly, we're finding is flood recovery, it always takes longer to get money deployed than you think, and I appreciate all the support from the state that's pushing hard to get federal money out to the local communities. We talked earlier about rural broadband, and I wondered if you could elaborate a little more on the existing programs, and are there any prospects of expanding programs? I know that, for example, the FCC program puts a pretty low bar on internet access for rural communities, and are there any plans in Colorado to try and aspire higher, and how can we help make that happen?
Okay, well, let me first thank you for your comments on the issue of the roads and the floods. I had meant to talk about that because, frankly, as I was talking about the incredible economic expansion we've seen over the last 3.5 years, I think we really need to put that in the context of what we've faced over these last 3.5 years. During that time frame, we've faced 13 federal disasters, federal declared disasters, and it ranges, of course, from fires to floods to droughts. We've had all kinds of challenges. And yet through all that, we've come together, I think, demonstrating, to me, two things: the governor's leadership and this state's, your resiliency. We've worked together, and when the governor said, look, we're going to reopen those roads, I don't know how many of you saw those roads between here and Estes Park, the area around Lyons, Jamestown, even down in my neck of the woods, down in Manitou Springs and Colorado Springs, Cheyenne Canyon. It looked like we were going to be working on this for years. And yet, the governor at the time, he had just come out of hip surgery, he was on crutches, he hopped right to it, and in fact, working with CDOT, bringing in money, taking some of those state reserves, we got those roads open. We made sure that people could access Estes Park, which is so reliant on tourist dollars, and really for those folks who, frankly, couldn't get between their homes and their jobs. So that was good news. It created jobs. And one of the other things that we saw is that because the governor worked very hard to foster relationships with folks like the HUD secretary and the transportation secretary, we were able to access more federal dollars sooner than I think we would have been otherwise. So it's been incredibly helpful. Broadband, we have more work to do. Again, we've made great progress. I started working for government way back in 1993, working for Governor Romer, and I was the head of the Department of Regulatory Agencies, which included the Public Utilities Commission. And at that time, we were just trying to deal with rural telephone service where many people either didn't have phones or only had party lines that only worked once in a while. When we didn't have any of the infrastructure that we have now. You know, we used to talk about what we called pots and pans, plain old telephone service and pretty amazing new stuff. So because we were just then beginning to think about the prospects of digital communication. Now, we've made great progress in our rural communities. We need to make more. I'm going to ask Ken to also talk a little bit when he gets up here about some of the things that we're doing with the feds. Again, I think he's more on top of that than I am. But what I do know is that we've made progress. A lot of our communities now, especially our schools, are able to access broadband to better serve their students. But, you know, there's still that kind of the last stop, you know, that Lone Eagle business venture capitalist who wants to be able to do everything from a remote ranch but needs high speed but is the only end user for it. We need to think about ways to do that that are wireless and not dependent on fiber optic or other direct linkages. So Ken, one more thing for you to address. Okay, before we give Ken more stuff to do, I think it's, oh, we got one question over there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. My name is Tom Livingston. I'm with the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. I'll go ahead and ask the marijuana question today. We recently had a site selectors conference here, and most of them had conveyed that really wasn't a big impact from their perspective, but there was one that did say that it does have an impact. We had a company yesterday in one of our breakout sessions. She actually said that there was, she doesn't like to say that their business is in Colorado. The reaction that she was getting was that what's happened to Colorado. So I'm curious as far as what your assessment is with marijuana now, and where we kind of stand with that since its inception, and kind of give us a summary of where we're at with that today.
Sure, happy to, because as all of you know, you travel around the country, and I expect that you, like me, when you tell people, yeah, I'm from Colorado, that's the first thing they want to talk about. I think it's gotten a little better. You know, at first, you know, several months ago, that was always the first thing, and there was always, you know, attached, you know, to kind of a bad joke about it. But, you know, look, it's the law. People in Colorado put it on as an initiative. The governor did not support it, but it is the law, and so our job now is to make sure that it's implemented in a way that makes sure people are safe, that it's well regulated, and that it doesn't harm our economy. Those things are key. Right now, we've seen no signs that it is harming our economy. We've seen no signs that public safety has been harmed. We have seen that there's been increased tax revenue. Those things are all good, but it's going to take a lot more work. And the governor has said, look, I was a brew pub owner. I knew that when I wanted to get a liquor license at a new facility, I knew there were a million different things I had to do to ensure to both local and federal authorities that I was complying with every regulation. We need to make sure that our marijuana industry is regulated accordingly. We want to make sure we keep it out of the, just as with alcohol, keep it out of the hands of people who are underage. We want to make sure that we are collecting the revenue that the state is entitled to and that the people wanted when they passed these initiatives. So far we've seen that everybody's watching us. Those businesses who would say, I don't want to come to Colorado because I don't like that, they better think about where they are, because we know that these movements are afoot in many, many, many states. And while Colorado may be the first, it certainly won't be the last. Many other states have already passed it or have things on the ballot. So this is not something where Colorado is going to continue to be unique. But Colorado is having to demonstrate that it can be done. And so far, I think that we have. It's involved a lot of folks, a lot of time, a headache that frankly we didn't ask for and didn't want, but we're taking it on. I think so far, the evidence is that between local authorities and the state, we've handled it well. Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. It is also my pleasure to welcome Commissioner Jill Rapella to speak with us this morning. Commissioner Rapella was elected in 2008 to the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Her role as Commissioner, Ms. Rapella is focused on infrastructure, community, and economic development. Commissioner Rapella has served on many boards and commissions throughout her career, including the Colorado Counties Incorporated, the E470 Highway Authority, and the Denver Regional Council of Governments. She's very active with many regional economic development organizations where she's been a strong advocate for business. Prior to serving as County Commissioner, Ms. Rapella held positions on the Douglas County Planning Commission and the Board of Education. Ms. Rapella has a Master's of Education and Professional Studies, in Organizational Leadership and Executive Leadership from the University of Denver, and received her Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Design, Industrial Construction Management from CSU. Please help me and welcome Commissioner Jill Rapella.
What a pleasure it is to be here. I feel like I'm with my peeps. Everybody knows that I've worked very hard in economic development. Candidly, that has been my passion as a county commissioner. As stated, I've served on a lot of different boards in our community, the Board of Education, Planning Commission, but it was in 2008 where I was elected as a county commissioner in a very, very unique time. I'd met with a lot of people in the business community, and along with one of our economic development organizations, we hired a consultant to understand exactly where we were at in Douglas County and what we were facing related to how we were doing business with the business community as a government entity. This report provided quite a bit of pieces of information that gave us the groundwork to change how we did business. It was amazing for me to watch government entities continue to take a bat at the knees of the business community at a time where they were struggling. We did just the opposite in Douglas County. We got right to work, we got rid of regulations, we streamlined our permit process. I was behind House Bill 1029. It gave counties the opportunity to reduce the business personal property tax for new businesses coming into communities up to 100%. Because of our success in Douglas County in bringing in new businesses, we've just made the commitment where we can raise the business personal property tax exemption for our existing businesses up to $100,000. That's because of the success we've had. Douglas County has been ranked second in the nation for fastest job growth because what we did as a government entity, we created a fertile environment. We have not had to go out and recruit businesses to come into Douglas County. That fertile environment for them to succeed is what they need. There's nothing more important to a business. Time is money. We hear it over and over again. Government gets in the way. Constantly, government can get in the way. You all out there who are economic development professionals, you know that you have to work with your government entities in order to be successful in bringing businesses into your community. Your word means nothing if you say, oh, I'm a busy, business-friendly community. When the experience for the business, they come in and then they face hurdles and roadblocks over and over again that creates a frustration. I have story after story of businesses coming into Douglas County saying we've never seen anything like this. We built a 5-story hospital, 5 stories, groundbreaking to ribbon cutting, 18 months. We parked a trailer on site with our staff there daily, working through issues, not waiting until the final inspection, but working through issues with the contractor on a daily basis to make sure we, Douglas County, met their schedule and their deadline. That goes a long way. When architects, engineers, contractors, the business themselves have an experience like that in a community, they become your marketing force. They go out and tell other businesses, this is where you want to have your business. When Hitachi came to Douglas County, it was kind of odd to me that all of a sudden the announcement was in Denver. And with all due respect to our governor, he spoke at this event, but he also gave Douglas County credit. And he asked me, why is everybody wanting to go to Douglas County? I'm starting to get in trouble. And I said, it's simple, because we treat businesses well here, we created a business-friendly climate. Now here's what's interesting, what I'm experiencing right now. We have regulations happening at the state level and regulations happening at the federal level that businesses are now coming to me and saying, what can you do? How can you help? There are a lot of people in the room here that I join every year with the Accelerate Colorado trip where we go to Washington, D.C. to talk to our federal legislators and Congress and Senate members, about what is happening in Washington, D.C. that's making it hard for us to do business here. Douglas County's been on the forefront of doing a stormwater coalition. We led that effort. We got many jurisdictions on board with that effort, except the governor. He has not yet to join that effort. We've led so many issues trying to create the business-friendly environment, trying to share what's working for us. The state constantly has been passing regulation after regulation, the legislature, every single year. I know people say that the governor's gotten rid of regulations, but no one can seem to put their finger on exactly which ones those are that have made it easier for them to do their business. I got an email about 2 weeks ago from a gentleman, a new piece of legislation that was passed last year. He's a realtor. Every single year he has to go to door to renew his realtor's license, fingerprinted, background checked. Then when he goes back a couple months later to get his appraiser's license renewed, guess what? Fingerprinted, background checked again. If he goes back again to get a mortgage broker's license, 2 days later, fingerprinted, background checked again. This is the type of redundant regulation permitting that is unnecessary and it's crippling our businesses. I have a business in Douglas County that I am trying very, very hard to hang on to. They want to leave the state. Candidly, he has said he's mad at the governor's office. He's grown his business by 1,100 jobs, has tried to seek help to do the hiring that he has grown from 2005 until now, 1,100 jobs. He didn't get any help from the state. And he said because of that, he has the impression the state doesn't care about him and growing his business, and he's looking to leave. I'm begging him to stay. He said regulation is killing him. We touched on a lot of things. Lieutenant Governor Garcia touched on a few things that I want to circle back around on. The construction defect issue. I've been hammering on this issue for 6 years. Quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about it. Douglas County created a plat note to put on projects that the Homeowners Association cannot change in a desperate attempt to locally try to create an opportunity for this very critical and important housing option to be built in our community. I know many of you in this room and many local elected officials that were part of that collaborative effort to bring forth the bill last legislative session. It was extremely unfortunate that our governor took no position and stayed mute on that issue, and he has a Democrat legislature that he could have influenced to make sure that bill was heard. 3 days before the end of session, I'm testifying next to Mayor Hancock, Mayor Murphy, and Commissioner Rozier, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, who care very deeply about the options, their economy, the homes that are available in their community, and the economic impact that that is having, and it's devastating our community and the opportunities. And yet, the legislature would not hear it. We got through one committee's hearing on that. And unfortunately, gosh, there's an annual luncheon that Metro Denver EDC has. And our governor spoke there, and he never brought up one of the biggest issues facing our communities, this construction defect, in his speech. Didn't even bring it up. The second issue, energy independence. I've met with veterans who beg me, please, please, please make sure Colorado continues to be part of the solution for our energy independence in this country. We've got to stop sending our boys to the Middle East. They are losing their lives to protect a resource that we have here in our country, and we can be energy independent. We've got to stop sending our money to make other countries rich so they can fund terrorism to fight our way of life. Colorado has that opportunity. And yet every single year we have a threat of instability, not just for our economics in Colorado and the importance that this industry provides to our state, but for our energy independence and for our security as a nation. And let's go to what that setback, that local control setback that everyone talks about, that no local official is even allowed to speak on it. You do a 2,000-foot setback from a structure on the surface, do a radius around that. That's 80 acres. Many times in Colorado, you have property rights owners that are separate property rights owners for the mineral rights versus the surface rights. What mineral rights owner is going to sign off on any construction, building, or development on the surface if for every structure they now have an 80-acre sterilization on the surface? What it's going to do is it's going to cause the surface property rights to be in jeopardy because mineral rights owners won't have access to their property. No one understands this because the task force that was formed doesn't have local elected officials sitting on it. There may be 1 or 2. There's 1 commissioner on it who does not come from an oil-producing county. Many of the oil-producing counties, Weld County has 85% of the oil production in the state. They put their name on the list. They didn't get selected. Sean Bolton is the president of Colorado Counties Incorporated. He represents 64 states. He also comes from an oil and gas producing county. 64 counties, I apologize. He comes from an oil and gas producing county. He had recommendations from the West Slope. He didn't get selected to sit on that task force either. There's an agenda that's happening in the energy industry in this state, and it's crystal clear that it's going to continue to get rolled back, with disregard to the economic impact it has in this state, with disregard to property rights, and disregard to the local elected officials who have statutory authority on property rights and local regulation. It's an extremely frustrating issue for me. I know there are people in the room that witnessed when Congressman Polis promised 125 people that he was going to continue to create instability every single year on this issue. Continue to create instability. Everyone in this room knows one of the most important things for businesses to come into a community is predictability and stability. We all know that. But we have elected officials who disregard that and continue to kick the can down the road and create instability. I guarantee Bob Beaupre and I will not let that happen. We will stand up and fight for what's right in Colorado. We will fight for our communities. I'm in this because a job is one of the most fundamental core things that every person should have the opportunity to have. When people have a job, they provide for themselves and they can provide for their families. Nothing else matters, that very fundamental thing, because then they can pursue their quality of life as they define their quality of life. Without that, everything else falls apart. When people have jobs, everything else comes into play. Your economy strengthens, your communities are able to thrive, your government entities then have a tax revenue base that they can then invest back into their communities, invest back into transportation, back into public safety. It's such a simple formula, sometimes I just want to go crazy. I've had reporter after reporter ask me, how is Douglas County doing so well? How are you ranked so high? How are you standing out in the nation as the only county outside of New York and Washington, D.C. is thriving like this? It's simple. Reduce regulation, streamline permit process, reduce the tax burden on businesses, create a business-friendly environment. Invest in transportation infrastructure. It's the same thing all the site selectors tell us all the time. But I don't understand why I continue to see at the state level and at the federal government level more and more regulations. Let me give you an example. 2 times in the last 2 weeks, I had 2 different businesses tell me in Douglas County they had a flood certificate from the Corps of Engineers. It expired. They're ready to turn dirt. They're ready to build. They're closing on the property with the builders. Yay, economic progress. We all know all the industries that's impacting and the economic stimulus that creates. Oh, guess what? Your floodplain is now navigable waters of the U.S. And now you have to wait a year, if you're lucky, for the federal permitting process. Now, as a local elected official, are you kidding me? Now the federal government is jamming up our local economies because of their permitting process. Again, this is what Douglas County led. This is what Accelerate Colorado is all about, that I've been participating in. Push back the federal government and their regulations. Push back the legislature when they continue to pass legislation that hinders our ability to support our businesses to be successful. I want that gentleman that I'm trying to keep in Douglas County, keep his 1,100 jobs here and not leave the state. He's told me he's asked other people, in his colleagues, why don't you relocate your business here? They say no, because Colorado is too high in their regulations and they don't like businesses here. And that's the impression they have from our governor's office. A lot of people talk about how good Colorado's doing. I'm telling you firsthand, Colorado could be doing so much better. We've got to get this regulation out of the way. We've got to get the state agencies to understand how important everything that they do is in creating that fertile environment. One thing that Bob has asked that I will do when he asked me if I would run as his lieutenant governor running mate, he basically asked if I would do at the state level what I did in Douglas County. And based on the results we have in Douglas County, I'm pretty confident it'll work. We're going to go through every state agency, and we're going to basically do what Bob's calling an audit. It's the same thing we did in Douglas County. Comb through the regulations. Get feedback from the staff within these agencies. Candidly, they know exactly where some of the jam-ups are. Get their support, work toward creating a business-friendly, responsive agency that supports the business community. We're also going to ask for information from people on the outside, just like we did in Douglas County. Businesses, tell us where the roadblocks are. Tell us what you think could be done to help make you more successful. We implemented all of those things. And then we're going to make a list of all the pieces of legislation that have been passed that are anti-business. And we're going to pursue unwinding those anti-business pieces of legislation. We're going to create an extremely business-friendly climate in Colorado, just like we were successful in Douglas County. And I want to touch on a couple of the other issues that came up. Education. I am baffled how at the state level we have adopted Common Core. And I'm surprised that Lieutenant Governor Garcia didn't address this. The studies have shown in other states that are coming out that have adopted Common Core. Let me explain to you, let me back up, explain. Common Core is a standard. It's an education standard level. Common Core is the lowest common denominator. That's what our schools are now expected to do. I've reached across the aisle, spoke with some of my Democrat friends in Douglas County School District because I want a more hardcore, non-political response. Tell me what you think. These are professionals in Douglas County. Tell me what you think of Common Core. And they said, candidly, Common Core is teaching our kids for 2 generations ago, preparing them for 2 generations ago. Douglas County has opted to raise the standards and continue to teach our kids for the next generation. Common Core will not teach kids to be prepared for college. You talk about remediation now. With Common Core in place, remediation is going to increase. The achievement gap is going to span. It's already happening in New York City. I don't know why we would lower our standards for education to the lowest common denominator. Is that because then we want our scores and our schools to look better than they actually are, but they're not prepared to move on to higher education? And then the legislature passed the PARCC test. The PARCC test is the assessment test for all students in the state. That intertwines and locks in Common Core. Bob and I are very interested in unwinding all of this. We're very interested in a teacher's Bill of Rights, gives teachers more ability to teach, use their professional ability, teach the kids. Pull back on the testing and the assessment. Teachers are so frustrated and tired they can't teach. All they're doing is teaching to the test. Because now if they don't prove that they're doing well on the tests, that jeopardizes their career. We have gone so awry in education and what we are doing as government, mandating. We need to articulate what we expect in the outcome and the performance and let the professionals figure out within each of the communities how to get it done. Every community is different in Colorado. Gosh, I have the opportunity to sit amongst 64 different counties every single month looking at pieces of legislation, twice a year for our conferences. It is wonderful hearing what's going on in their different communities across the state. It is intriguing to understand how different their communities are, how different their challenges are, what's important in their communities. I embrace understanding that. I grew up in Colorado. I have several generations native in Colorado. That's one of the best things about Colorado is how different we are. But if you don't understand how different all the communities are in Colorado, then you're not going to understand how a piece of legislation that's a one-size-fits-all can actually harm some communities if you allow it to become law and if you don't veto it. There are several pieces of legislation that should have been vetoed. Even our governor admits they should have been vetoed. Didn't do it. Now we have some significant problems in the state related to our economy, related to energy mandates, and the list could go on. I don't understand how a governor could not veto something that isn't good for the whole state. Water. I know quite a bit about water. The key answer is storage. The key problem, state and federal regulations. Same issue over and over and over again. We talk about existing storage, utilizing existing storage that was brought up. Guess what? We're on year 16 for Chatfield. Existing reservoir, existing water rights. 16 years. The Corps of Engineers has been studying this. Guess how many millions of dollars have been spent on this study? What do you think the millions of dollars over these number of years and all these studies do? Guess what do you think the price of that water is going to be? And the price of actually taking that reservoir and create it into a legitimate bucket. It now may be outpriced, the ability to do it. That's insane. Again, the federal government, navigable waters of the US. They're coming into the states and they're telling us what we should do and how we should manage our water. Gosh, if there's a little trickle that rolls down the street, that's now navigable waters of the US because it left a watermark. We as the county, we now may have to look at federal permitting for us to build a road, to rebuild a road, or build a ditch or a gutter. That's how extreme it is. Bob and I are very interested in standing up against the federal government and pushing back. I do not understand why this governor has not pushed back the federal government in its intrusion into this state. It happens over and over and over again. The West Slope, I just finished a tour of the West Slope. Every single community in the West Slope, their economy is struggling, deeply struggling. Guess what the issue is? Energy. Between the energy mandates and then the regulations on the oil and gas and coal industry is killing their economies. People are leaving, their children are suffering. They can't fund their own local governments. Again, it goes back to energy. And yet we just went through this debacle of a special session. Are you kidding me? Governors should have been ahead of this and stopped any effort to try to hinder that industry in our state. And yet there was failed leadership there. I'm in this because I care very deeply about our communities. I care very deeply that people have access to home ownership. That's the American dream. People can't get into home ownership if condos are not an option. Veterans are telling me they can't find housing. People with disabilities are saying, oh my goodness, the rent is skyrocketing. It's simple supply and demand, folks. Supply is down, demand is up, price skyrockets, rent is skyrocketing. There's a lot of rental projects out there, but the rent itself is skyrocketing. We have an imbalance in the housing market just due to lawsuits. That bill that was presented did not hinder fixing any construction defects at all. What it did, it was protecting the existing homeowners of these condo complexes from going into lawsuit that created a situation where they couldn't finance it or sell it for years, and created an environment where people didn't have access to that home product. There are so many issues that are affecting our communities that because we have a governor that's unwilling to stand up for them, or unwilling to fight for what's right for our communities, unwilling to get in front of issues and push back the federal government, millions of dollars in impact. Remember I mentioned about those 2 projects that now the flood plains? Get an impression of this. So when nobody's turning the dirt, these are contractors, these are earth graders, these are furniture companies, these are landscapers, mortgage companies, insurance companies, real estate agents. We all know the economic impact. You guys see the studies all the time. So I've got 2 projects now that aren't going to happen for a year to 2 years. Where's the market going to be for them to sell those products? Is it even going to be there in 2 years? We've got to stop the craziness of this overregulation. That's what Bob and I are all about. We're going to get government out of the way. Get government out of the way, you demonstrate that you are supportive of the business community, because the business community brings jobs to our citizens. When our citizens have jobs, everything else falls into place. So that's what Bob and I are about. That's something we are very, very committed to. And Bob promised me that I would not just sit back as a lieutenant governor, that he'd put me to work. Because those of you who know me, if he didn't put me to work, I'd probably drive him insane. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
The company that you mentioned a couple of times that is threatening to leave and take their 1,100 jobs with them, where are they threatening to go?
Texas or Arizona?
Those are the states that have less regulation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have another business who came into Douglas County. Lynn will know who I'm referring to. I won't say him by name. Left California because California actually told them, we need to do a study to determine if you're the kind of business we want here. And by the way, that study is going to cost $250,000. And by the way, you get to pay for it. That's what first brought them to Colorado. Is those kind of statements, those kind of governmental intrusions, and those kind of regulations.
Hi, my name is Lisa Nolder, and I'm from Lincoln County. I would like to know what you're going to do to assist and connect rural Colorado. You didn't mention the rural community in your speech. Do you have any ideas in that regard?
Well, each of the rural counties in Colorado have their own unique economy. Some are agricultural economy, some are ranching communities, and some are more energy-related economic based. The one thing that most of these communities, the common denominator in most of these communities, depending on what their industry is transportation infrastructure and energy costs. So the energy costs, I'll tell you that 252 needs to be undone, the energy mandate. It's creating so many problems in the rural communities. Broadband is another issue that needs to be addressed. Transportation, I didn't touch on that. Douglas County has been very aggressive in pulling together our C470 coalition to have all governmental entities participate, and it will be a P3 project to where we utilize the private sector to help expand that interstate. We have a serious problem in Colorado related to transportation. The rural communities don't seem to get their fair share of the transportation dollar, and they're just patching their roads together left and right. You know, I'll keep saying it over and over again. You've got to strengthen your economy to generate a revenue. We have to make a commitment for a transportation budget. We have a challenge with Tabor. Tabor doesn't allow us to bond out as a state. That's why we need to utilize the P3 public-private partnerships in order to do other projects. I've got some ideas that I will be sharing with Bob on how I think that we can utilize our access to energy in the state of Colorado and tag a transportation dollar to that. There are a lot of studies that have been done on what the tolerance of a new tax for transportation infrastructure. The one thing that is appalling to me is across this country, the minuscule budget that we have in infrastructure, and I'm talking about transportation infrastructure, I'm talking about water, I'm talking about sewer. Our infrastructure across the country is crumbling, and we're not addressing it, we're not prioritizing it. One thing I know for sure, return on the investment in infrastructure is paramount to economic development. It's paramount. Everything in Douglas County I've always looked at, if we do this, what's it going to do to strengthen the economy? Because if it strengthens the economy, we're going to generate a tax revenue that comes back to us. Let me explain to you the benefits, and I strongly encourage everybody to use the benefit of House Bill 1029 in your business personal property tax option. So we have a vacant piece of land, and if there's a cow on it, it's not generating any taxes to us. We have a business considering coming in. We waive 100% of the business personal property tax. In return, we get a commercial office building there. Now our real property and the taxes we gain on the property and the building itself, significant new revenue we wouldn't have had otherwise. Who cares about the business personal property tax? Again, it's because of all that new revenue that's brought into Douglas County that we've been able to lift that exemption on existing businesses, $100,000. They won't be taxed, and that helps all small businesses. You guys understand these statistics, but I'll just share them with you. In a two-year period, Douglas County brought in 16 new businesses, generated over 7,600 new jobs. The salary wages paid each year were over $250 million. The economic output, because of those businesses come into our community per year, stimulation to our community, $2.5 billion. And Douglas County had a new revenue stream where we could lift the exemption on existing businesses. There is nothing more important to our state as to what you guys do. But you guys need assistance from government. You need to have government out of the way at your local level, at your state level, and at your federal level. There are easy ways to do it at the local level. It's hard to do at the local level when you're butting up against things at the state and the federal level. That's why I'm so excited to be joining Bob, and we can tackle the state level, and I'll guarantee you, Bob being a former congressman, he clearly understands the Washington, D.C. situation, and he can stand up against Washington, D.C. He's very intent on banding with the governors in the western states to file a lawsuit against the federal government to get out of our communities and stop hindering our ability to strengthen our economies.
Once again, thank you very much for coming out this morning. I asked the Lieutenant Governor about TIF. So if a bill similar to what came to the governor's desk last year that he vetoed came to this governor's desk, how would he respond?
The bill that was, for clarification, the bill that required the cities and the counties to have an equal share in kind of the tax.
And also that the commission could appoint a member to the board, that they have skin in the game, and Mark, what's the final?
I think I understand.
Calculating the percentage of sales tax, so the city participation in it, yeah.
I can't speak for Bob Beaupre on how he personally would respond to this. We haven't had that conversation. What I will tell you is I think there's an inherent unfortunate situation that sometimes legislation pits one entity against the other. And it was very difficult for me watching municipalities and counties going head to head on this and kind of beating each other up. In Douglas County, we just have such a different approach. What's good for a municipality is good for a county. Bottom line is we go in, we help, we work, partner with our municipalities in bringing businesses in. For goodness sake, the benefit, the county gets a property tax, the city gets a sales tax, it's a win-win. I think there are ways to encourage communities to work closer together. Honestly, Douglas County got Cabela's because we worked well together with Lone Tree on this. Their previous experience in Colorado had been a city and a county fighting over an issue. That doesn't do anyone good in doing strengthening economic development. I think there are a lot of ways that communities can negotiate on what's the best fit regarding the TIFs, but I don't believe one size fits all. Again, I don't remember if I said this before, that House Bill 1029, the business personal property tax bill up to 100% that I pushed, that was one of the only bills on business personal property tax that passed the legislature, and there's one reason it passed, and the reason that an issue that I'm very passionate about, it's because that bill gave local elected officials the discretion to make the decision as to how they do that waiver of that business personal property tax. That bill passed the legislature unanimously, both the House and the Senate, because it respected the differences between the communities. Any bill that comes forward regarding the TIF, what I would advocate in that bill is that you respect the differences in all the different communities and you give them some discretion to come together and figure out what works best for their community. If the legislature starts to prescribe how it's meant to be, they could be setting up very contentious situations between cities and municipalities that now is legislated and mandated. That makes it difficult for communities to come together and partner and do what's right for their community and figure out what that formula should be, figure out what that balance should be. Because what legislation and pieces of legislation don't know, they don't know the other relationship and the other partnerships that municipalities and counties have in place that need to be taken into consideration. Only the local officials know that. So that's a piece I would encourage in a new piece of legislation. Anyone else?
Thank you for being here, Jill. My name is Susan Blansett. I live in Golden, R&M Resource Development. I want to ask you about an issue that's really national in scope, but deeply affects Colorado, and that is the growing gridlock in Washington that is also being seen at the state level. Here we are in Colorado with fully a third of our voters in this state who are independent, unaffiliated, and increasingly who feel that they don't have a role in our party processes. Compromise seems to be a dirty word. But there seems to be growing sentiment in Colorado toward looking at open primaries as a way to allow those more moderate or unaffiliated voters to engage again in a process that has become increasingly more radicalized, whether you're D or R. What's your stand on open primaries? In a state where, Colorado is a state where we have a long tradition of being able to reach across the aisle and work on solutions across party lines, but I see that evaporating or eroding, surely. What's your position on open primaries?
What you just described as evaporating, I would honestly say I think the reason it's evaporating is what's being presented as what's happening, and what's really happening in these collaborative efforts are very different, very different. The perception and the intentional image that's being put out there, and I guess I'll just use the oil and gas task force. Sounds great, setbacks, sounds great, but nobody's really talking about the real issues, and the people who should be at the table are not at the table who understand the issues on it. To me, that's a false facade. So I think that's where a lot of the distrust happens. Open primaries, very intriguing. Very intriguing. I see some benefits to it. I see probably some concerns in it. My mother was Democrat, my father was Republican. In many ways, my mother, because being a devout Catholic, was much more socially conservative than my father was. It was a unique pairing. I grew up in Colorado, and you're right. You didn't always see this extreme divisiveness. There were things that came up, that were kind of experiments, and they were a little bit more on the political side. I can state a few that I was personally involved in growing up. It was busing. Busing was an education experiment. I drove to school, rode on a bus an hour to school in the morning and an hour in school back in the afternoon. Imagine putting education dollars in the classroom for an hour longer in the morning, an hour longer in the afternoon, what that might have done for education. That was kind of a political push, political experiment back in time in Colorado. So we're going to have our ebbs and tides of that no matter where we are, just as a society, that's going to happen. I'm open-minded to open primaries. So I guess that's my final answer on that.
Hi, Kitty Hook. You were talking about busing. Well, there's a situation at DPS where George Washington, the reason that they have such an excellent IB program was because of white flight, because of busing. Right now, DPS, with what's happening with the Corps, they're dumbing down that program, and they're taking away, and along all the school districts, instead of letting the IB program have that 4-year program, they're dumbing it down to try and bring the others up. I disagree with that philosophy. I think we need to figure out a new way. What would you propose?
I agree with you. Fortunately, school districts do not have to accept Common Core. There are some financial penalties and dings to that. The other challenge, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Hopefully we won't see how it plays out because we can undo it, would be to see the school districts who decide to have a higher standard than Common Core, and yet we're already bound to the PARCC assessment. How will those students do if they're not being taught to that test? It'll be real interesting to see how it plays out. I absolutely believe that some of the more struggling school districts, and especially in the rural areas that don't have the resources, but they're going to be given a lot of resources to implement Common Core, that they're almost going to be in a no-win situation, that's what they're going to have to do because they're financially struggling. And so they implement Common Core, and are those kids going to have disadvantages? I had an interesting conversation with one of our former legislators who's very, very strong on education. And he's a Democrat. I talk to a lot of Democrats. I'm Republican, and I think I learn a lot when I hear their perspective, and I can look at it a little bit differently from the standpoint of what is at the root of the issue. Is it political? Is it agenda? Or is there really some legitimate stuff? And he basically said his daughter was going to East High School, very strong supporter of public education, very much against vouchers when he was in the legislature several years ago, and that was kind of a discussion. Until he went to the school and they said, and his daughter is partially blind, she has some disabilities. They basically told her, well, and he wanted to talk to them about her education itself, just the education. And they said, we promise you we'll make sure your daughter's safe. And that's the only thing they could promise him. He said in that moment, he began to appreciate parental choice. He pulled his daughter out of school, put her in a private school, and she's thriving. It's those kind of things, the parental choice, that's critical. And I'll tell you, businesses that come to Douglas County, I don't hesitate to ask them, why did you come here? When they talk about education, they're very supportive of the direction that the Douglas County School District is moving, supporting choice for parents, engaging with the business community to make sure that the students are being taught to go into the workforce trained for the 21st century needs. Our school districts talks to Apple, Google, they talk to all these big corporations. What are you looking for in your students? They need students who have critical thinking ability. They need students who really need to understand how to engage and be innovative in their thinking. The Common Core, it does nothing for cognitive thinking, nothing whatsoever. It doesn't relate the lessons to each other. And I've asked the experts, I've asked Democrat experts on this. This is not a political thing. This is not political at all. It's amazing to me that 47 states have now put Common Core in because it happened so fast. It was just this influx. And now we have to go through each state by state and undo what's been done. Lowest common denominator should never be a goal for anyone in education in the United States. Never. We've always been in the forefront in education and innovation and research and development, and that's what we need to teach our kids to do. Innovate. Be entrepreneurs. Open your own business. You know, there's so many things, areas, and the spectrum. What does our workforce need? I'm so tired of hearing businesses say, I need this, this, and this, but I can't get people who are educated and trained. When I'm talking about manufacturing that has some high technical requirements, that just needs somebody who's had some education in that and understands how they can, you know, utilize the equipment in their, this was in Wisconsin, because I heard this when I was in Washington, D.C. And yet none of the government seems to want to support educating and training students for the workforce. We talk about higher education. I'm amazed we don't tie student loan and financing to encouraging students to go into the areas we have a glut in the workforce. You guys see that all the time. I know what you see. I've been doing this too, and I see the same thing. It's baffling to me that we have such an extreme disconnect from our student loan programs and to what's needed in the workforce. Hello, let's do this. We have a much stronger economy if we're training people to directly go into the workforce and tying financial aid and incentives to do that. It's kind of simple to me. I'm standing up here feeling like I'm preaching to the choir because you guys understand this, but really in essence what I'm saying is we want to take it to the state level. We want to expand it. We want to create greater opportunities. We want to get this construction condo thing out of the way, and we want to create stability and predictability in the energy industry. Those two things in this state will skyrocket. There are a lot of other things that we can do related to regulations that are affecting existing businesses that they shouldn't have to be facing and dealing with, that should just make it easier and easier for businesses to be here. I want to create a state, along with Bob, where businesses want to come here. And they're not saying, no, we don't want to go there because your state isn't friendly to business, because that's what they're telling me.
One last
Jeff Wells from the city of Fort Morgan. Thank you for being here today. My question is a broader question. It brings up some of the things that you've touched on today, and that is cost of electricity in the future. Economic development, you look at industry or commercial or whatever types of development you're looking at, they all run on electricity. Education runs on electricity. I'm really glad that Tri-State was here talking about getting some more comments back to the EPA on some rules that they're putting into place related to the current administration's outlook on the future of electricity in our communities. What do you have in store or what plan to ensure that we have affordable and reliable electricity after the federal government puts into place all of these other policies that from most people in the industry's perspective will tend to either raise the cost to a point where it becomes unsustainable, or we actually start having reliability issues in the long run because the wind does not blow 24/7 except in Wyoming.
Great, and I absolutely agree with you. I've had a lot of conversations with Rob and IREA in our community as it relates to a business coming in. For example, if a data center comes in, they're very high users of energy. And needing to make sure that we are addressing those needs and able to address those needs as businesses come into communities. But the approach is going to be the exact same approach in going through each agencies and regulation. You identify what the administrative policies, procedures, rules that are embedded within our agencies that are hindering that pro-business climate that we want to create, much stronger pro-business climate. We can tackle those, you know, at the governor's office level through the agencies themselves. But the other side of it is we have to look at all of the pieces of legislation that have been passed that make this issue a problem. And we have to make a list of the pieces of legislation that we have to go back and undo and turn around. And we need to get support in the legislature to do that. Find people to sponsor the bills. I guarantee Bob Beaupre will be the kind of governor that will be out in front of things, not behind things waiting to see how they turn out and just staying mute on it. He'll be out in front of it. He'll be out talking about how important these things are for our communities and for our economy. He'll be out there out front giving some strong encouragement to the legislature to make sure these things get done. And when Bob sees a bill that comes across his desk that is anti-business, anti-people, anti-opportunity, I guarantee you he will veto it. He will not have a problem vetoing pieces of legislation. I think I just got the 0 times up. You guys, a lot of you know me. A lot of you have seen me get very feisty in Washington, D.C. when I hear things, and anybody who's interested in creating an anti-business climate because of regulation. in the core of it. I've done it in Douglas County. When I have a reporter ask me, what are you doing in Douglas County? How are you ranking, standing out across the nation? And I talk about all those things. It's about government getting in the way. The government too often gets in the way. We need to get it out of the way. Bob and I are very committed to that. We're going to take that to the state level, and we're going to push back at the federal level. I have a commitment to make sure I continue to go to the Colorado Counties Incorporated meetings. I want to still hear the counties and the differences on their positions on pieces of legislation, how it affects their communities. I want to be all ears. That's the one thing I think that was brought up. You brought up about, people feel disenfranchised from the election process. I'll tell you, a lot of people have told me it's because they're not heard. Many of the rural community, they feel like that no one at the state is hearing them, that no one's understanding how different they are in their communities. I'm committed to going there and continuing that. I'm continuing to commit to stay involved in economic development entities, and I want to make sure I continue to try and take that trip to Accelerate Colorado, to go back to Washington, D.C. with industry leaders and local elected officials, and always have that perspective, always have that open-mindedness to hear and understand what challenges they're dealing with. And candidly, I'm going to seek feedback from everyone when we get in office and we begin to do that audit of the state agencies and try to identify those hindering pieces of regulation. So with that, thank you so much. I always enjoy being in front of groups like this because it's like family to me. And thank you so much for what you do and the fight that you have in getting and bringing businesses and keeping businesses here in our community. So thank you.